Okay, here we go. This is going to be part 4 of the intermediate CAD exercises, and we're going to draw this chess pawn, or something that looks like a chess pawn. So I'm just going to pull up my standard drawing right here. This is what we're going to work with. We have the top view that shows diameters of 20 millimeters and 40 millimeters, 20 millimeters for the interior and 40 for the exterior. We have a curve here, the thickness of the neck, and the height here at 5 millimeters for the little lip right here. Okay, and I want to, with this one, continue to talk about sketch organization, how we can kind of do our features. So I'm just going to do a part design here, and we'll go from that. So I'm going to draw this a couple different ways, but I'm first going to start with just a big sketch that kind of controls everything. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw some of the construction geometry, and I like to draw stuff kind of loosely so then I can just add the constraints that I want later. So you'll see, like, if I draw it vertical here, you'll see how you get that light blue vertical constraint. And I'll keep that. I want that for right now. I'll keep my constraints right now. And I'll do that. I want that. Now, this perpendicular, I don't always want. I can do it and it's fine, but I'm going to draw that. I'm going to hold control here to make sure that that doesn't work. All right, and then I'll hold middle mouse button to kind of drag it down a little bit, and then I'll draw this, and then I'll hold control here, and I'll put another one. Do that here. There we go. All right, and then I don't want to put these perpendicular constraints, so I'm just going to clean this up a bit, and then I will say horizontal, horizontal. Actually, that one doesn't matter. I'm going to delete that one. Okay, I'm going to do horizontal here, and I'm going to add a tangent here. Now I want this to be a little bit of a slope because this isn't going to go straight to a right angle here. And then I actually don't want this line. I'll delete that, pull this down a little bit more, drag that up here, and then I'm going to add an arc. Okay, do a 3-point arc from here to here. And since I want this to be a half circle, since I'm going to do a rotation here, the way that I'm going to accomplish that, I'm just going to go ahead and add a dimension here to get that, make that 10. No, I would actually want that to be 5. I want this to be 5 because if I go back to my original here, since this is going to be 10, and I want to imagine drawing half of this image to revolve it, I'm going to make that thickness 5. You always want to half it, and in previous videos I've kind of screwed up the dimension stating. But to make sure that this is half, I'm going to grab this point and I'll make it coincident with this line here. So when I do that coincident, now I have a semicircle here. So that'll keep it clean when I do my revolve. And then let me go ahead and just now add some more dimensions to clean this up. I'll make that 5. There we go. And I'll squeeze back to that one more time. I want that to be, that's going to be 20 up top. So that's 20 up top here and 40 down here because of how the views are arranged. So when I go back, I want to make this 10 because it's the radius because it's going to be half. And then I'll make this here 20. All right, and then this is going to be way too high. So we can go back and check our height one more time, and then we have 60 here all the way. So then I'll go back to dimension. I can just grab this line. I can make that 60. There we go. Boom. All right. So then I kind of have my fully realized sketch, and then I can say coincident. Boom. Oh, and then I still need to put my radius here. And what did I put for that? 25 radius. There we go. Okay, so I'll add radius of 25. Boom, there we go. Finish the sketch. Okay, so then I can go back to home. Again, remember that you can see your sketches in the timeline down here or as it adds to up here. So I'll just select that sketch. I'll go up here to create. I'll say revolve. select my profile, and then it does not like my profile. Oh, there it goes. Okay, cool. Just like my profile. And I'll do my axis as this. Now, I've talked about this before, but when you're doing your features and you're talking about how they're going to reference to each other and things like that, sometimes there can be a big difference whether or not I want to make my axis the actual line of my sketch, or I actually want to put it as my origin. So if I hide my sketch real quick, well, that's not going to show the profile, but you can see like right here, you'll see the yellow axis that indicates the y-axis. So I could also click the Z here. In this situation, I'm not really going to make that big of a deal about it, but that's just something I want to highlight as far as like kind of like planning out your model. But again, we're just quick and dirty drawing, so let's go back to that. And there's my axis. It'll let me select it. Oh, I hit it. That's why. There we go. All right. Select that. Boom. There we go. Okay. So pretty simple, right? All right. Let me go ahead and save this. File, save, and then actually it's 4.3 now, but whatever. All right. Part 0104-1. Okay, so we'll save that. Okay, so start up a new one. And what I want to do this time is just highlight a different approach. Now this is fairly simple part, so but with that simplicity, I can highlight the considerations that I want to take in there. So the first time what I did was I just drew everything as one single sketch. But one thing which I find very interesting, especially when you're making things relative to each other, is that you can kind of draw them in pieces. So if I go back to this is 20 diameter. So if I would imagine, even though this is kind of cut off right here, if I imagine this circle as having 20 millimeters in diameter, so if I was to extend the edge of the circle down here, this would be 20, so it would be 40 to here. So so to the middle would be 50. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna draw this in pieces. And what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna draw the base first, and then I'm gonna draw the circle over it, right? So I'm gonna use two sketches. So I'll create my sketch, and then I will say, just pretty much do the same thing. So just gonna hold control so I don't put the auto constraints because they always get in my way. I'll just do that. Seeing that just the parallel constraint is always a pain in the butt. Alright, and then I can just delete that, and then I'll go, and then I'll add a 3-point arc from here to here, and I'll grab these two and I'll make them tangent. And then I'll just go ahead and I'll put a line from here to here using the L hotkey there rather than going back and clicking every time. Hotkeys are your friend when it comes to CAD. Okay, and then I'm going to add some more constraints here to kind of set it up the way that I want to. All right, is that? And I want that to be vertical as well. Cool. All right, and then I'm going to add press D for dimensions. Okay, I'll make that 50. And again, you kind of have to worry about this when you start putting dimensions in there, but I can kind of drag it and kind of get it to where I want to. I like to kind of use this to kind of set up my dimensions. Oops. And then I had that accidentally selected, so I'll hit escape to get out of that, escape to clear my selections, press D again to go back to the dimensional tool. I can go down here and I can press 20. I can go here and I can make that 5. Okay, and then I'll go back here, dimension, and then I'll make that 5 as well. And then 50, dimension, and then I'll make that one 25. There we go. All right. And so then I kind of have all of that. I kind of, even though it's not fully defined, everything's defined to each other, so then I can kind of move and drag that around. And I'll pop that here. And I'll say finish my sketch. Oh, I need to make it coincident. Boom. And then I'll finish my sketch. All right. And then I have my first sketch there. Then what I can also do is I'm going to go ahead and create another sketch on that same plane. And then what I'll use is I'll just use this as a reference. So I can do create, and I'll just say line, all right, because I want that to be, I'm going to add an arc, 3-point arc. And so since I want this to be a semicircle, one of the quickest ways to draw a half circle is to grab this line and make it coincident. Now, one of the things that's interesting here is that by geometry, this is also a midpoint. So I could, if I was going to undo this, there we go. I could click this, and I could do midpoint, and it will work the same way. But one of the things is geometrically, because of how a circle works, by this being connected to the edges of this, when I define this point to be coincident, back it up one more time. When I define this point to be coincident, because of how the geometry works, by definition, it's already a midpoint. So that concept is something that I like to bring up when it comes to assigning constraints, because you can do stuff different ways, but when it comes to how you assign constraints on sketches, when it comes to how all of these stack up together, some of those relationships can either be very helpful or bite you in the bottom. But just different ways, going back to the ideas, different ways to go at things. I think in a previous video I mentioned about how I could set the centers of circles as coincident, or I can make the circles themselves concentric. So we get to the same place, but there is a difference in how we do this. So now I literally have that right on top of this. I can finish my sketch. Okay, I can go back to my home view. Okay, so now I have these as two individual sketches, and then I can just do them as revolves in pieces. So I can go here and do this. Now, Fusion can let you play with a lot of different profiles, so it'll probably let me grab both of these at the same time and do my axis. So now Fusion will let you overlap with sketches. Now I can do this that way, but I'm actually going to cancel that. So, but what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to do my revolve here first as separate, okay? And then you'll see when you see the operation, it gives you these options: new body, join, cut, intersect. So I'm going to keep it as a new body, and then I'm going to say okay. Keep my first one, and then you can kind of see that down here, it shows my history, and then I'll go, and then I'll do another revolve, and then what I'll do is I don't want that profile. Oh, no, this profile. I want that profile. I can select the axis. Now, since it's overlapping, it wants to do a cut on its own. So you'll see that. Maybe that'll give you some ideas on how to create some stuff. But I'll just do a join, because if I do it as a join, then it'll give me what I want. So I'll do that. All right. So then, having done it as join, I've gotten to the same place. But if I go back down here, and if I edit this feature, and I want to go back down to, and I'll say if I do it as a new body, now it's going to look the same, but what I want you to pay attention to when I do the new body is how it changes the bodies. So if I go here and if I hit OK, then I'm going to have two separate bodies. Okay, I'm going to have this one and this one. Now, this can be helpful when it comes to design. A lot of times people, when they're doing stuff for 3D printing, I like to kind of design this way. So if I'm trying to have parts that can fit with other parts, I'll actually model one thing as solid and then put it inside of the other one, so that way I can kind of just do a remove of it. And then, given the fact that each of these have their own sketches that they're linked to, it gives me a little bit more flexibility in design. And then actually, just to kind of further highlight that feature, let me go here. We can also do an intersect, right? And then that's going to give me the shape that pulls with that. And intersects are really cool when you're trying to get like combined surfaces or like exotic stuff, because I'm trying to get the piece of that. And while I could draw that with a singular sketch, in this situation, doing the intersection of the two will give me this one. But I'll just kick this back to join, and then we'll go here. Okay, so simple enough. Maybe clear as mud. Okay, I'm going to save this one. I'm going to say part 0 4-2. Okay. So now also, again, this being Fusion, there's a bunch of different ways to approach these guys. So one thing that I'd like to show is that I can also just put all of that information just exactly on the same sketch. And Fusion does this, in my opinion, a little weird, but again, um, my rule is when it comes to modeling is that whatever it takes you to get your part. So this is some interesting behavior, so I like to highlight that. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to add everything like I did before. I'm going to add an arc here. So it's kind of messy again. I don't always, I want that tangent constraint here, so I'll use that for the auto constraint. I'm going to zoom out and then I'll just start setting all this stuff up. And it's interesting when you're doing the drawings and it throws in the auto perpendicular and parallel constraints. Those things just really bug me because it'll create relations sometimes. Like you'll just be drawing stuff and then you'll be going and then your drawing will be over constrained or something like that. And the reason it'll be over constrained is because it put in a perpendicular or parallel constraint that you weren't particularly noticing. So a lot of times when I'm drawing stuff and I know the dimensional relationships that I want to establish, I'll do exactly what you saw me do here. I'll draw my baselines with specifically constraints turned off. And then once I get kind of my joined relationships, I'll go back and I'll add the constraints that I want. Because again, covering that design intent and kind of thinking about the exact relationship that I want to have between the objects that I am drawing. Ooh, and see again, it kind of go and set that dimension, then this arc turns around. So you can kind of go and help a little bit. So I'm going to actually delete that. And then what I'll do is rather than do that, I'll delete this and I'll just drag this up a little bit to kind of like guide it to kind of say, because a lot of times it'll just try to do these math equations. And I like kind of drawing these a couple of different times because I can never make those errors pop up exactly when I want to. I mean, I guess they're not really errors, but kind of just going and drawing and going through it lets me show up some of the situations that I like to highlight. I can never make it happen when I want it to happen, but if I just start drawing, it happens naturally. Okay. Now, this is a behavior that I try to avoid generally just because of how I learned how to draw draw in CAD programs, but I want to highlight it here because again, it's just something that Fusion lets you do. So I'll highlight it. So I'll go ahead and I'll create my circle, semicircle separate to it, and then I'll just go ahead and throw my constraint right here. Make that coincident, and then I can just could even do a design intent thing here, whether I want to make this here, whether I want to make that 60 or I want to say delete, I'll dimension this, or I can just make this radius 10. Both get to the same place, right? And then I'll go back here, and then I'll say 25, okay? So now I have a complicated sketch, right? So I'll say, do that. Now what'll happen is that if I go to a revolve, I can pick all of these individually. Now, I don't really like doing this, but again, it's something that you can do in Fusion. I'll do that, and it gives me that. So I can kind of just draw them on top of each other. Generally, I like my sketches to be closed, and that's just to carry over from other CAD programs. I first started on what is now Creo Elements Pro, but Pro Engineer. And when I was learning it in undergrad, I was very specific about having like uh, closed sketches and not having extra, like the fact that I have these on top of that. So when I'm saying those sketches, what am I talking about? So I have this here, and this will work just fine. It gets me to the same place. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to edit this sketch. So just having lines like overlapping and things like that. Now, another cool tool to do and stuff like this, because this can help generally for construction, because a lot of times, like the first one that I drew, I actually sat down and made the arcs and did all that stuff. But something which is pretty useful is you can actually go up here and use the trim tool. And then once you have all the stuff, you can just drag this to clear out the lines that you want. And then boom, then I have that. And yeah, and it's going to remove constraints, but because of how it's drawn, it's still set up. And I can finish the sketch there, and it's the same thing. So again, just more examples on how to arrange your sketches and combine your features. One of the things that I really, really enjoy about CAD and creating these objects is that you can go at it so many different ways. And what it really comes down to is that, again, I'm going to say this so many times. What matters is that you get your part in the way that you want it to be. And however you get there, as long as you get there and it satisfies the dimensional requirements that you want, then you've done what you needed to do. So a lot of people, when they look at CAD, they get so focused on having to do it like one specific way. And granted, when you're working in large organizations or things like that, the how and why of how you arrange it is very important. But me personally, I think a lot of people just get caught up in the beginning part, and it's just get your part out. You can always come back and make it better. I tell people that anything that I'm drawing seriously, I have to draw 2 or 3 times just to kind of figure it out. So how you want to organize your sketches, your feature tree, all that stuff. What is it, like all is permitted or something like that? So anyway, thank you for your time. And actually, I'm going to be doing some Blender stuff on the next one. So now that I've gone through all of these, I actually want to go back on all of these parts that I've drawn and draw them in Blender as an exercise. So we'll see how that comes together. So if you're interested in that, please stay tuned, and I will catch up with you later.